GoneHollowMinis is about kit bashing, you've probably noticed. Lately though, I've become a little bit worried that maybe kit bashing might be becoming a less important aspect of our hobby. Most of the kit bashing that we've done is for 40k, fixing models that I wasn't a huge fan of, bringing back old models that have since lost support, or even dredging up vehicles, units, and characters from older lore and past editions to give them a spotlight on the tabletop. The problem is though, most of this kit bashing was just cosmetic, either to improve an existing unit or to make one unit a different unit, if that makes sense. Which is fine, but that sometimes feels like our creativity is still being hampered by datasheets and game rules. Which is why I was super excited when I picked up one of the new Horus Heresy Journal Tacticas to find units in the back that aren't sold in the GW range. They're entirely built around kit bashes that you have to do for yourself. And sure, that may sound like a chore for some, but that is also the exact kind of thing that could get me sucked into an entire new game system. Which is exactly what happened. So welcome to GoneHollowMinis, my name is Colt. Today we will be kit bashing a Saturnine command squad, and talking a little bit about what kit bashing means to me, and to our hobby. Okay, first things first, what is a Saturnine command squad, where does it come from, and where can I buy one? Well, a Saturnine command squad is a command squad in Saturnine Terminator armor, of course. It comes from the new Forges of Saturn Journal Tactica for the Horus Heresy, and you can't buy one anywhere. That's kind of the point. The Saturnine command squad isn't a kit you can buy, or even an option for the existing Saturnine Terminator kit. Instead, it's billed as a kit bashing option. Something that you get to put together yourself using spare bits and creativity. The idea is to use bits left over from a Saturnine Praetor kit, in combination with a standard Saturnine Terminator squad, at least as a base. Beyond that suggestion, it's pretty much up to you. You get to choose from basically the entire Saturnine armory, plasma bombards, disintegrators, hammers, axes, and both of the arm-mounted particle shredder or plasma caster options. There are issues with this approach, or at least issues with this kit selection, and don't worry, we'll get into those a little bit later, but for now, let's go ahead and figure out how we're going to start this kit bash. A Saturnine command squad is made, at base, out of one Saturnine chosen champion and one Saturnine chosen. I'm just going to start with these two, but there's a good chance that I'll end up adding a third, depending on how I like to play this unit in the game. I'm focusing on my Sons of Horus army at the moment, so I'm going almost full melee. Axes feel more Sons of Horus to me than hammers, so we'll also plan on going with those. And I can also stick a Legion standard onto one of them, which I will absolutely do, just so that the enemy knows who hit him. But that begs the question, where do I actually get these pieces? Well, I've seen some confusion about this online, so I'm going to do my best to clear this up as best as I can. The idea is to use leftover pieces from a Saturnine Praetor. Here's mine, and here's the parts I had left over, at least the pertinent ones. So you can see I've got one set of leftover Teruyas, one leftover chest cord thing, a whole hammer, which I'm still not going to use because axes are the best, and one leftover hand. Note, hand and not arm. Also a couple helmets and shoulder panels, but those weren't very Sons of Horus, so I didn't show them off. This is not enough to make a Saturnine command squad. Even putting aside that there's really only one set of decorations left over, the real crunch comes down to the hands. See, the standard Saturnine Terminator kit only comes with left hands, one per Terminator. The idea is obviously that they get one fist and one ranged weapon, but when we're talking about the command squad, that's just not enough. We can take one fist and one melee weapon, and I can't imagine I'm the only person in the world who wants to do that. So unless we want to go out and buy a minimum of 2 more Praetors to get the loadout we want, we're gonna have to get creative. So I started with the base. These are by a creator on Cult, and you can find these files plus the others I used in this video in a saved collection linked in the description. From this staircase base, I can work on building and posing the legs. The regular kit includes these little registration nubs that slot into cutaways on the inside of the knee, but for a bit more freedom, these can be trimmed away while still leaving enough contact area for glue. And walking down a staircase looks to be just about as much of a range of motion as Saturnine Terminator armor can give, so trust me, the more freedom the better. After that, we can start building our way up. As far as the torso goes, the only real change I made was to carve away the Saturnine Aquila on the chest. This isn't necessarily loyalist, instead referring to the Saturnine tech enclaves that helped design the Terminator armor. But that said, it still does look pretty Imperial, so it's gotta go. On the first Terminator, the chosen champion, kind of the unit's sergeant if you will, I left this blank so that I could drape the spare cord over it from the Praetor kit. On the other Terminator, I cut some spikes out of square styrene rod, then glued them over one side of the breastplate for a bit more Chthonian brutality. I also made sure to use those Tarudias on this guy. Again, he's the chosen champion, so I wanted him to feel a little bit fancier than the other guy. But this takes us to the arms, which brings us back to our previous issue in the lack of hands. The left arm is fine, I can just put that in a resting pose and we're good to go, but that leaves the right. It wouldn't really be an issue if we had the hand and just not the weapon here. After all, weapons are pretty easy to kitbash, but the issue is not having the entire fist. That's a pretty complicated bit to try to recreate, and I don't really want to buy 2 more Saturnine Praetors, which means we gotta look for third-party bits. I do have a sneaking suspicion that there might be a Saturnine melee weapon upgrade sprue somewhere in the works, since in this book there is also another Saturnine unit that also uses 2 fists, and it's a little bit weird to have more unbuildable options than buildable ones for your brand new pattern of Terminator armor. We don't have any confirmation on that though, and who knows if it's actually going to happen or not. So to the 3D printer we go. With our bits sourced, we can just go ahead and slot our replacement arm into its socket. And hey, look at that, a dual-armed Saturnine Terminator. That was easy. I know I said I was going to go with axes, but come on, I've got to have at least a few maces in the Sons of Horus army. He's about as tall as Horus is anyway, so why not give him his own world breaker? From there, I got to adding some more Chthonian embellishments. A ponytail for his head, some mirror coins and golden skulls to dangle from his armor, and he was feeling about ready to take on Terra himself. And that was our first chosen done, so on to the second. You've already kind of seen the process for that though, so instead of just rehashing all of the details, why don't I talk a little bit about what kitbashing means to me and, I think, to our hobby. As mentioned, I am all about kitbashing. You probably noticed. I think it's the most crucial step in telling stories with our miniatures. Paint helps too, don't get me wrong, but there's only so much that pigment can do when applied to the same generic models. Nah, kitbashing is where it's at for me. It helps our armies tell their own stories and helps our forces stand out on the battlefield. It takes time, patience, and effort, but it's all worth it in the end. Right? Sometimes I feel like the game systems we play might not respect the hobby time that we put in as much as I would like. Sure, the ultimate goal is the aesthetic, rule of cool and all that, but sometimes I feel like the rules and unit options of a tabletop game can actually limit my creativity. I'm constantly walking the line of making something that's cool, but still vaguely close enough to an existing unit to actually use in the game. Take my heirloom, for example. All of that work, all the effort, and they're still just different sanguinary guard, a different version of a unit that you can just buy. I'm not saying there should be rules for every possible combination of bits and artistic license that any player could ever have. That's impossible. What I am saying is that there's absolutely ways to, if not encourage, then at least reward kitbashing and hobby creativity. Like this Saturnine command squad. You can't buy this unit, not without sitting down, getting those creative juices flowing, and kitbashing something that's completely your own. Then Horus Heresy himself looks at your gaggle of kitbashed guys and says, hey, that's cool, here's some rules so you can use them on the tabletop, champ. It's just neat. You're not really missing out on much if you only play using out-of-the-box kits, but if you take that extra step, there's something there to reward and encourage the hobby side of the, hobby. And this contrasts with datasheets like the new 40k Death Company kit, which don't really count as kitbashing to me, I don't think. That's just making you buy multiple boxes to get a unit that's standard for the army, which I guess does fit the strictest definition of kitbashing, but it's more about the creative side of it, you know? Before someone puts in all that effort to write me a 50 bullet point list of all the kitbash friendly games, I totally know this isn't just a Horus Heresy thing. There's plenty of kitbash friendly games out there, and I plan on getting into more of them now that I have a very nice resin printer at my beck and call. But you don't have to look any further than my analytics to see that Warhammer 40,000 is still the hobby, so it's worth having a discussion around, I think. So let me know what you think. Do you think kitbashing and hobby creativity is as reinforced as it should be in our modern hobby, or do you think there's still work to do? I think you can see where I stand. But getting back on track, that's our 2 Saturnine chosen all kitbashed up, so time to get some paint on them. This recipe is pretty similar to the one that I showed off in my previous Sons of Horus video, but I have made a few tweaks. I felt that the previous iteration was a little bit too flat and too drab, so I have made some slight changes. It starts out the same with a black prime. Any will do, but I'm using Pro Acryl Black Primer through my airbrush. After that, we'll do an all-over base coat of Scarab Green. This will be our shadow tone, so make sure you get it into all the nooks and crannies. After that, we can start layering with a 1-to-1 mix of Scarab Green and Temple Gate Teal. Think of this as our mid-tone. We want to make sure to leave our shadows, but most of the rest of the armor can be hit with this layer. If you're doing this by hand without an airbrush, you can always just use this mix as a base coat instead of that first layer, and then glaze Scarab Green into our recesses and lowlights as a shade. Next, we gotta get a little bit weird with our colors. See, Sons of Horus have a kind of inconsistent tone when it comes to their green armor. It really just depends on how old the sourcebook you're looking at actually is. Typically though, it ranges somewhere from a dark sea green to a kind of lighter verdigris color. So my next layer will be a mix of Temple Gate Teal and Ochre Brown. This will give us a lighter shade that's tinged with a slightly dingier, drabber color. Be careful with this, only apply it to your highlights. It can overpower our previous layers pretty easily. Lastly for our layers, a 2-to-1 mix of Temple Gate Teal and Bright Pale Green. This only gets applied to the absolute brightest highlights. This can be even more overpowering than our last layer, so be careful. Now we can put down the airbrush and do a bit of edge highlighting and chipping using a 1-to-1 mix of Temple Gate Teal and Bright Pale Green. Sons of Horus look great with more weathering, so I'm switching between sponge chipping and applying edge damage with a brush. In addition to finer scratches, I'm making sure to apply some thicker, chunkier chips that I can highlight later. That highlight is just done with a bit of mahogany, applied within those larger chips. I can also use a sponge to apply some spot chipping to flatter panels. As for the black, it starts simply enough with a base of Vallejo black. After that, a subtle first highlight of Vallejo German Grey. Then building up to Vallejo Black Grey. Then finally Pro Acryl Black Blue, and a super specific highlight of AK Anthracite Grey. After those layers, we can do some edge chipping just like the green armor. This is using Army Painter Deep Grey. Usually I go more blue with my black armor chipping, but with so much green, I think a more desaturated gray works better here. After that, we can apply any transfers we need with a gloss varnish, and then seal them in with some matte varnish. Now to get everything looking nice and dingy, I'm going to mix up an oil wash with a little bit of burnt sienna and raw umber. Don't go too nuts with this. Keep it thin and only apply it into our crevices where dirt and mud might accumulate. You can also use these colors to add some streaks of grime to accentuate our chipping. One last recipe that I've gotten some questions about, the gold trim. That starts with a base coat of AK burnt tin. Then a highlight of rusty gold. And a final highlight of light bronze. You can also go back to the previous colors to blend everything together if you need to. Oils can also look great on these metallic elements. I haven't felt the need here, but you can really easily highlight those rivets with a bit of our oil wash from earlier, or even add a little bit of a verdigris teal for some corrosion. And there we have it, just the last few finishing touches on our paint job, and our Saturnine command squad is ready to hit the tabletop for the War Master and Chthonia. This was a really fun unit to make. I'm all for massive chunky armor, especially when I can get that armor into melee combat, so this unit was perfect for me. And even with the issue of those missing right hands, I really enjoyed the process too. I'm a huge fan of command squad type units, especially when they give you the chance to really make them feel like they belong in your legion, chapter, regiment, or what have you. I think these guys will be a definite centerpiece in my growing Sons of Horus army, and it'll be great to get them onto the tabletop shoulder to shoulder with my Praetor. Let me know what you think about units like this that require kit bashing. Again, I'm all for it because it gives me another excuse to get those creative juices flowing, but let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video though, why not drop a like, and hit all those YouTube buttons while you're down there. I know it's a cliche, but it really does help us channels out. Subscribe and turn on notifications to not miss the next kit bash, and until we meet again friends, be safe, be kind, and don't you dare go hollow.